Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome back to my studio. For today's lesson we are going to paint in transparent light technique, but also we will practice a lot with water control, and instead of trying to avoid watery blooms, we will use watery blooms in our advantage. I will use grain thin paper, dull blue watercolor paints, but you can choose any of your favorite paints, preferably dark ones. I squeezed in phthalo blue. I will prepare the same mixture of the same color and dilute it with water. Let's start to paint with the first petal. Here is the flower center. It will be our darkest point and focal point. I bathe my brush in my blue mix and I prepare my first petal. It will be the most far away petal, so no need to stress it out. We, so to say, warming up when we paint our first petal. I have a brush fully loaded with water and I bring all this blue color into the middle, something like this. I can correct a little bit the shape of the petal, but as I said, this petal will be on the very back of our flower. So right now we are not focused on details. We just need to create nice, beautiful basement. And what I would like to do now, I would like to switch with brushes, and with a smaller brush, grab the bolder, darker color, same phthalo blue, and add a little bit more contrast into the edges. This area of the petal is wet, therefore bold paints mix with transparent one, and they all together create nice graded wash, so to say. You can play around and add some darker spots around the petal. Don't be afraid of doing something wrong. We are painting abstract, modern flowers in very loose technique, so nothing can be wrong. It's a nice opportunity to test your paper, train your hand, something like this. Now let's leave it like it is and let it completely dry. Painting the next petal, I would suggest we firstly map out the future petal with the water. If it helps, you can add just a hint of colored water so you can see where you are glazing your paper and create some nice petal shape. So firstly we preparing the watery background for our future petal. Firstly add our blue mix into this area and let it all flow by itself. With the second step, I would like to play a little bit around with bolder mix. So I go with my brush around the edges, add big bold layer, big bold area around, and in the flower center. Don't be afraid and grab really bold mix. If you paint from pans, you can just grab paint right from the pan without diluting it. Then you will get this nice bold mix. So we have now nice, very interesting mix of colors, nice graded wash here. you can move your piece of paper a little bit to let your paints move. I see some puddle here, so to remove it, I dry my brush with a paper towel and use my brush as a sponge. And I just get rid of this excess water. At the same moment, I can create nice, interesting edge for the petal. We need to dry this one thoroughly. And again, let's start with just watering the petal area. I always try to overlap and create a little bit different shapes to make it more interesting. And when you glaze, especially in the layer technique, try to slide your brush very gentle. So your brush basically not touching the paper, just sliding on this watery surface. Very, very gentle. The better paper you have, the easier that will be, because papers, cotton papers with 300 GSM thickness, they usually hold big amount of layers easily. So now let's create a bit bolder blue mix. I bathe my brush nicely in blue mix. It's relatively bold, and I would like to go around my watery mix and just enjoy how water and paints are mixing. I think this is very relaxing and pleasant part of painting with watercolor. If we're not overthinking it, if we don't want to rush and control too much our painting, then we can really enjoy the process and observe beautiful mixes, everything. Again, I would like to play around. Therefore, I will add very, very bold mix, probably the boldest I can create. Almost no water in this mix, just enough to let it distribute. I would like to emphasize this area of the petal, and I would like to leave the bottom part almost untouched. And be sure your watercolor paints, they will find their way. When they have the path of the water, they will find the way how to get there. And now to create nice visible blooms, we have to wait. Here we applied water part a little bit too early, and now we have to wait. Of course, when I need to show you how to create these blooms, things are not working, but that's how it is. While I was talking, paper gets a little bit dry, and to play around I can move paper a little bit. If I set up now the direction of the water moving towards this dried part, that can also help to create these blooms. So I follow up my water and try to see what will happen. I'm not finished here yet, but I can see how this excess water, when it gets into the dry area, that creates nice borders. Now I will even use my hairdryer for 1 second to speed up a little bit the process. I haven't dried this area completely, and now we have relatively getting to dry paper. I bathe my brush in the water, and I would like to add a little bit of watery area in this field. I'm not afraid of these borders. Right now, that's the whole point of our lesson, to create nice textures, to be able to feel how our watercolor works with the paper, because with different papers it always very different. So you need to get used to your favorite paper. I can also help a little bit my watercolor and remove with clean and dry brush, to remove excess water around the edges maybe. See, we are getting very crispy edge around here. And why not to add a little bit of bolder tone around. So I just dilute a little bit this paint which I squeezed out of the pen. Always nice to add more bold mix into the flower center. So I just add more of bold mix. I can also add few strokes around, something like this. We're still playing with one petal, and see what happens when we add water, when we remove water. Now I wash my brush, dry it with a paper towel, and I would like to add more water in this section. Now let's dry everything. Now after this petal dried out, you can see the texture that we created. I'm pretty sure at that moment you have something completely different, which is great. Now let's create the fourth petal. And now, as usual, I will set up the shape with water. Water is your tool, same as paints, as paper. And when you create this, you can think around how you would like to set up your next petal. Maybe something like this. Maybe lift it a little bit more. So we have a beautiful over section of overlapping of the petals. Again, I create watery mix, carefully sliding with the brush. Something like this. I don't want to touch this area because it's already full of pigment, and pigment is not fixed yet. So I just create, now I create watery but bold mix, and with my brush I will go around and cover this area which I haven't touched with water yet. So that allowed me to skip extra moves with my brush, and also that saves the previous layers. Now I go with my brush from the middle of the flower towards the edges. I want my mix be pretty bold, because these textures, they work better on bolder mix. They're more noticeable on the bolder mix. And now you can see why it wasn't very important to add textures to the background petals, because they basically covered already under the previous layers. So why bother? And you can move your paper as you like. You can add more bolder mix around, and we will be waiting again for that precious moment when the paper gets dry but not completely dry. And of course, if you would like to create even washes, once your paper gets dry, you shouldn't add water at that moment. but to create textures you need right exact that moment. And see if it is bright and glossy or getting a little bit muted. And once it dries, that will be nice time to add water. I load my brush with clean water, squeeze it a little bit, and with brave move I just go around my petal and create some weird shape. It doesn't matter. We are playing around with the textures and see how now already you can see how it works. You can I started from the middle. You can, for example, do the same thing around the edge, but the big one like this. Here it's a little bit too dry already. Always about good timing. I see this puddle that doesn't help me, so I remove it with my clean and damp brush. I'm not sure whether I like this moment. I just connect these two areas like this. I think that will look better. And I'm waiting again. I almost finished drying the petal, but I see here can be a nice area to add one more little bloom. Same here at the very bottom. Let's add water and see how it will work. Things always look very different when they're dried. So now let's finish with the last 5th petal. I think 5 would be enough, but you can go for many petals as your watercolor paper allows you. I make my outlines firstly with water. It's a little bit, it's already has a hint of blue in it, which is very convenient. Maybe add a little bit more interesting shape right here. And now I create again darker mix and cover the petal area with relatively bold but creamy mix of watercolor. Like this. Don't worry about details for now. We will have time for that, as you already realized. It's sometimes weird thing with watercolor. When you need things to be wet for a longer time, they dry immediately, and when you need them to dry out quicker, it takes ages. So just think about this as a nice relaxing exercise and enjoy the process. So now we have this petal, and of course right now I would like to repeat the same trick as we did before, but in these 2 petals I added water from the center, and that pushes pigments aside. Now I would like to add water at the edges. Okay, ready? And just clean water in my brush, and I go along the edge and add water. You can correct a little bit the shape. The bottom part is still too wet for this trick. I think I will change my idea and add water not here, but around this edge. Just clean water. This area, look, where the paper was dry, it's already noticeably lovely and some blooms created. I would like to remove this puddle, or another trick you can do, you can move around, turn the paper and see what happens. I would like to add more to the flower center. It's a little bit dissolved with all these overlapping layers. I want to keep that bold. I'm gonna add another drop of bolder mix into this area, and just to see what happens. Wait a little bit, have a look around, and once it gets dry, we can add a little bit more of water into these bold areas again. And see what happens. Let's dry it completely and finish it with a stem. For painting a stem, you can either use smaller brush and the same paint, or black paint. You can use gel pen, inks. So what will be your call? I will finish this painting with the same paint. It will be completely monochrome painting. I will just use a smaller brush and super bold mix, almost no water in it. I think for this flower, it was so playful, I would like to add some curvy stem. With the stems, no need to try to paint stem in one go. You can paint it in small little brush strokes and therefore have a better control on the shape. Something like this. And now let's emphasize the flower center and make bold inner pollen area. Something like this. You can again play around a little bit with water and add a drop of water into this bold area. As we started with all these mixes, it will look very, very organically here. And our flower is ready. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you enjoyed the process. I'm looking forward to hear what would you like to paint next, and see you soon. Bye bye.